I call the meeting of the Urbana Historic Preservation Commission to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Dossett.
Here.
Mr. Metcalf.
Here.
Ms. Novak.
Here.
Ms. Palioso. Mr. Seiler.
Here.
Mr. Shepard.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here. We have a quorum. We have no changes to the agenda that I know of. And next is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on June 7th. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I'll move approval.
Actually, I had a couple of things.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Kim.
Thank you.
On page 3, on the second to the last paragraph, it says IHSA, and that should be IHPA, which is not even IHPA anymore, but we'll go with it.
The Illinois High School Association.
Yeah. And on page 4, the second longer paragraph, about in the middle, it says, if several people, well, maybe it was all right the way it was, just suggesting helped to write the nomination. It's just one nomination, not nominations. Anybody else? Can we have a friendly amendment to incorporate the changes? Yes. Yes, thank you. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous. Approval of the minutes as corrected. Written communications, we have a, Kevin, did you want to acknowledge that?
Sure. We received a letter that I passed out to the commission from Ted Christie, the Associate Director for Project Planning at Facilities and Services from the University of Illinois. And this letter was in response to a letter that the Preservation Commission had drafted about the campus master plan draft that had shown a couple of historically significant buildings being slated for removal. And this letter is to assure us that those are no longer slated for removal, is the way that I'm reading it. So,
Okay, thank you. It was the letter, right? Scared them. Next on the agenda, we have written communications. If anyone in the audience wishes to speak about anything besides the case that we'll be hearing in a few minutes, you may do so at this time. Oh, sorry. Yeah, audience participation. Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes. I said the wrong thing. Thank you, Scott.
Hi, my name is Louise Cooney, and I think I know many of you. I have the house at 801 West Indiana, which is a historic landmark property. I'd like to just raise a general topic for discussion, perhaps today, perhaps at your next meeting, about the process for monitoring of historic properties. Now, this is something that it's great. It's on your agenda every time you meet, but do you have a formal process for that? If so, is that process in line with any type of national guidelines, best practices, or anything like that? Because there are properties that are not being well kept, that are historic properties. So I would encourage the Commission to take a look at any written process that you do have and consider perhaps making that a more formal process. Waiting for people to raise a concern or neighbors to raise a concern seems to me to lack a proactive process. So perhaps that is something that you would have time to discuss today or at your next meeting. That would be much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions of Louise?
I just have a comment. Thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else in the audience wish to speak to anything other besides the case on the agenda? Nope, no takers. Okay, there's no additional audience participation then. We have no continued public hearings, no old business, and the next item is new public hearings. I open the case number HP-2017-COA-01, a request by Pierre Moulin for a certificate of appropriateness for the repair and restoration of exterior architectural features and the removal of an enclosed porch from the 1980s and other exterior work at 1404 South Lincoln Avenue. Kim?
I need to recuse myself because of a conflict of interest.
Thank you. For those of you who haven't been to one of our public hearings before, I wanted to briefly just let you know the procedures for how this takes place. Staff will present a summary of the case, and that will be Kevin Garcia. The petitioner may outline the request and presents evidence, and there are other opportunities for proponents and opponents to speak, as well as rebuttals and cross-questioning in the process. Kevin.
Good evening. Okay, so as stated, this is a request for a certificate of appropriateness to restore and repair the Zeta Tau Alpha sorority house, which is an Urbana historic landmark. This request is part of a redevelopment project that would turn this long vacant building into an 18-unit apartment building. And the plans include things such as fixing or restoring the roof, the windows, the siding, the brick and stucco siding, and the doors and the frames. Plans also include removing the late 1980s sunroom addition on the southeast corner of the house, and there are no new additions that are proposed. And then changes to the site would include adding parking areas, handicap accessible ramps, some walkways, adding bike parking, adding gutters, I guess that's to the house, but adding fencing and landscaping. And then in addition, the existing driveway on Vermont Avenue would be widened, and the driveway on Lincoln Avenue would be removed. Just for a little bit of background, so as I mentioned, this house is a historic landmark, and a certificate of appropriateness is required for any alteration that affects the exterior architectural appearance of locally designated landmarks. So hence the need for a certificate of appropriateness in this case. This is a comprehensive rehabilitation and restoration project. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and this work, according to our zoning ordinance and the preservation chapter of that ordinance, lists the types of work that are either exempt, so that don't require any review or a certificate of appropriateness. And then there are also minor works, which can be reviewed and approved administratively. And then there are major works, and the major works are the works that require the review of the Historic Preservation Commission. And that's what we'd like to, what we need to focus on tonight. So I will be addressing those, but in your memo you can find a description of the exempt works and the minor works. So diving into the major works, and I think I'll pull up the updated site plan here so everybody can sort of follow along. I should probably zoom in so we can see. Oh, there we go. Okay. So as I mentioned, whoops, maybe I can get this under control. Okay. Okay. Little technical difficulties. It's kind of a necessity at these meetings, I think. Okay, can I move over there? There we go. Okay, so as mentioned, the proposal calls for the removal of the 1988 sunroom addition, which is outlined this dashed or this dotted line here that you can see on these site plans. So that, and let me pull up a picture of that as well. But that is, so again, it's from the 1980s, and while it does try to mimic the sort of the style of the building with the brick and with the windows, I don't think there was any discussion when it was landmarked that called that historically significant or a historically significant part of the house. And then with the removal of that addition, it would open up the views of the original house. So there's the original 1928 house in the back. The original windows are still intact back there. So removing this addition would open that up, and then you'd be able to see the profile of the house that hasn't been seen since the late 1980s. Also, back to the attached plans. Let's go here. Okay, so there are new parking lots that are proposed. So this one, whoops. Okay, this one on the west side of the house is new. So there's an existing L-shaped drive that sort of goes up along here. This parking lot is a new addition, would be a new addition to the site. And there would be 17 parking spaces, including one handicap accessible space. And then there's another parking area over on the southeast part of the site, which actually this is a slightly older version of the plan. The current plan would retain the existing tree that's here, and then it would just have one handicap space here and then a second space up here. So this parking area would just serve two parking spaces. And then you'll see that there would be shrubs and things to screen the parking areas from the views along Vermont Avenue, and then some trees would be added on the west side to that green, some new green space over there. Okay, the next major work are the access drives, which, let me see if I have the most up-to-date, I think I have the most up-to-date plan here. Yeah, let's do
But
this
for
one.
clarification, Kevin, it is the one that was passed out on the
Yes.
dais? Okay.
Yes, so up there you have the updated version. The people watching at home and in the audience, please bear with me. I now have the current version here. So the plans for the access drives are to the one on the southwest part of the site would be shifted slightly to the west, and it would be widened to 20 feet, which would meet our zoning ordinance standards. The one on the southeast would maintain its current width, and it would be, I assume it would be paved and brought up to any current standards. Another major work, the next major work is windows, and I can pull up, let's find a good picture of some windows. Okay, so the existing windows are in pretty good shape structurally, and the proposal is to restore those windows. So that would be things such as removing rust, reglazing them, replacing any missing or damaged glass. There are some, that people have broken out with stones and things. And then they would be repainted as needed. No replacement windows are being proposed. There are three, I'll call them new, I think, yeah, in the memo I call them new in quotes, windows, because there are three new spaces for windows. But on the site they found existing windows, or they found original windows that must have been from the original 1928 house that had been removed, presumably when the addition was put on in the 60s. So if you look at the the north elevation. That's where they're proposed. So looking at the house from the north, there's the 1960s addition over here. And so two new old windows would be installed here. And then there is another window that would be installed here, where currently there is a door in that location. So those are the three new windows that you need to review. Then under major works, there's sort of a catch-all that says all other site modifications. So anything that's not explicitly spelled out in the zoning ordinance will also need to be reviewed as major works. So that includes landscaping, and the current set of plans involve retaining all of the existing trees that are on site. There are five trees on site. The plans call for retaining those. So let me go back to the. Here we go. Okay, so the current plan. So as I mentioned, this tree down here on the southeast, which had been proposed to be removed, is now being proposed to be kept. So that one will be kept, and then there are four other existing trees on site up here. 3 new trees would be installed over here, and then the other trees that you see on the plan down here are not actually on the site, so those would stay. In addition, there would be landscaping in the parking areas, so couple of bushes up here. As I mentioned, some landscaping to screen the parking area down here, landscaping to screen bike parking, and some air conditioning condensers here, and some other bushes around the perimeter of the site, and then to screen that parking there. And I just mentioned the bike parking. So there's bike parking that's proposed here on the southwest side of the building, and they would be providing space for 20 bikes, which is actually double what our zoning ordinance requires. And that would be, as I mentioned, screened by bushes. And then the only other site plan alteration, or whatever you want to call it, that I noticed that you might want to pay attention to is that there's a garbage and recycling area up here, so that should probably be reviewed as part of the major works. And that would be enclosed by a 6-foot tall wooden fence. Just for, if you're following along in the memo, just a very brief history of the site. So I've mentioned a few times the original building was built in 1928, and why don't I pull up a nice picture of that, because it's a good, yeah. Okay, so that's a pretty good shot of the original 1928 building. This area over here is the 1963 addition. So this building was most likely designed by Joseph Royer, definitely designed by Joseph Royer's firm, Royer, Danley and Smith. And then the 1963 edition was designed by Berger, Kelly and Associates. And then the 1980s edition, which I can pull up again somewhere. I got a lot of pictures in here. I can go through any of these if you want. So this 1980s edition, I'm not sure who designed that, but again, that did try and at least match the window style and the brick. The house has been vacant since 2010, and prior to that, it had been a sorority for most of its time, but since 2010, there's been extensive vandalism on the interior. We get a lot of false fire alarms and such. These are, if you want more details about that, I think you can review the landmark cases for this building. Okay, so there really Overall, there really are few changes that are being proposed to the exterior of the building. Most of the architectural features, the windows, the roof, the stucco, and all of that, most of that will be repaired and rehabilitated. And the most significant change I've mentioned a few times would be removing this 1980s addition. So, yeah, it's okay. Moving along to the requirements for a certificate of appropriateness, I am not going to go through each of these verbatim or the staff analysis, but these start on page 7 of your memorandum. But these criteria that you should review and discuss pertaining to this request include maintaining the significant original qualities and character of the building, retaining and preserving the historic character of the property, retaining and preserving changes to a property that have acquired historic significance in their own right, preserving distinctive materials, features, finishes, and construction techniques that characterize a property, repairing rather than replacing deteriorated historic features, and using the gentlest means possible when using chemical or physical treatments. So overall, after reviewing the requirements for a certificate of appropriateness at the staff level, we feel that this proposal meets all of the requirements necessary for a certificate of appropriateness. And in addition, this proposal will restore virtually all of the character-defining elements that make the ZTA House an Urbana Historic Landmark, and its reuse and restoration will ensure that this really outstanding building remains so and remains usable for decades to come. So there are, as in most cases, 3 options available to the Historic Preservation Commission. You can grant the requested certificate of appropriateness. You can grant the certificate of appropriateness with certain conditions, or you can deny the certificate of appropriateness, and if denied, you should provide reasons for the denial. And you can also recommend ways that the applicant could comply better with the criteria. City staff recommends that you approve the certificate of appropriateness with 2 conditions. The first is that the construction be in general conformance with the attached site plan and elevations, and by that I mean the most recent version that you have in front of you. And then the second would be that additional certificates of appropriateness are obtained prior to undertaking any major or minor works that are not contained in these plans, or prior to making any substantial changes to the major or minor works that are approved by the certificate of appropriateness.
Before you leave those conditions, Kevin, I was just thinking we might want to consider adding to one of these or both of these. Because this case is also subject to a planned unit development, it is possible that Plan Commission and/or City Council may make suggestions on some tweaks to a design or something, so that we wouldn't want to have to come back here if City Council is giving direction to change something with a parking lot, for instance. So perhaps we should add language after maybe the first one or perhaps both of them, except for those changes that are necessary to achieve approval of the planned unit development, just so that we're not keeping on going back and forth between the different boards and commissions.
And I would imagine that any changes that are necessary to meet the planned unit development requirements would be to the site plan and not to, say, the building. Like, they wouldn't say replace the windows. So that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Kevin? Okay, we'll move on to the next step then. We have the petitioner may now outline the request and present evidence.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Good evening, everyone, for the commission. I'm very honored to be here. I purchased this building 6 weeks ago. It was love at first sight when I saw it, even though I've been living in the neighborhood for 21 years and working at UIUC. I somehow had never been on a block of Vermont. And so when I saw it, and I saw it was for sale, and I learned about the history and the incredible decay inside, I thought this would be a great candidate for renovation because I like to renovate old houses. This one is particularly dear to my heart because it's an architectural style that is very close to where I grew up. There are old buildings like this in my corner of Europe where I grew up, and I actually gave it a name already, Chateau Normand, in recognition for Rohrer's style, architectural style that he chose for that particular building. When I purchased it, I was told it's a crazy idea because it has been classified as it has been designated as a historical landmark, so you won't be able to do anything. And I view that as a challenge, and when I did my diligence, I realized that it's quite the opposite. There are many things that look like they're in terrible conditions, like the windows, but in fact they can be restored. They won't need to be replaced. Even the roof, which has many leaks, can be repaired, keeping the same, exact same kind of clay tiles and so on. So it turns out that most of the work really has to be done inside, and I'm totally committed to keeping the outside as it is. We won't need to change a brick. We just need to do tuck pointing of the mortar, and it's really not very difficult to match the existing mortar and so on. I believe that this will be a building that can last another 100 years or so. The goal is to have it be fully functional by August 1st next year, so it can be rented to faculty, staff, students of UIUC, and maybe other people who wish to live in our neighborhood. And so our goal is to start construction around New Year, and hopefully to have it finished by August 1st next year. And so for more details, I think I would leave the floor to my architect. Okay, Kelly Hudson is going to present some of the issues and some of the details. So I don't know if you have any question at this point.
Any questions of Pierre right now? No?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Hudson. Kevin did a really excellent job, I think, of outlining...
I'm sorry, can I ask you to speak closer to the mic so that we can pick it up? Thank you.
Kevin did a really excellent job, I think, of explaining the project already. As you know, we're proposing 18 apartments in the development. They range in size from studio apartments to 3-bedroom apartments. There are some very interesting spaces within the building, so they're unique apartments in many cases, capitalizing on things like fireplaces and French doors and interesting shaped spaces like in the turret rotunda in particular. As both Pierre and Kevin stated, very little new work happens on the exterior. So we're retaining all the existing roof materials, brick, stucco, minor repairs. All the windows are going to be refurbished, and with the remarkable find of the original windows in the basement that we're going to use for the new openings. The site plan, I think, takes really good advantage of the site. We're able to create about 19 parking spaces. We have 40 beds in the development, and this compares with maybe 60 plus bedrooms or beds that were in the development or in the building as a sorority. So it's actually a reduction in occupants. Interior spaces, as I said, the first floor, and this is probably getting into maybe more than you care to know. If you'd like, I guess Kevin has floor plans we could share with you, if you're interested in that.
It's beyond what we review.
Yes,
We're exterior people.
right, okay.
And he already has shared them with us.
Okay, good, good. All right. Well, then you're aware that we've made the building accessible and compliant in that way with two accessible entrances, both the historic turret entrance and also the 1960s entrance are both made accessible. The first floor units are all accessible units, and then the upper floors are a little more customized. That's about all I have on it. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Did you?
Yeah, I had a couple. I walked around today. I'm thinking of a building on Green Street, which is not your responsibility, but it kind of catapulted me into this question. I didn't notice any fire escapes noted in the exterior of the structure. Are you to code with what is already provided in the interior? And so we're not going to have some big gargantuan thing
Right.
hanging off of the front of the building?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, amazingly, when they did the 1960s edition, they dealt with that. So there's a two-code fire stair in the northwest corner of the front courtyard. So it's in the eastern segment, southeastern segment of the 1960s edition. So that's very well done. There was a prior stair in the 1920s original portion at the rear of the building, and so these are at they're far enough apart to work for the extremes of the building, and there are no dead-end corridors or anything like that. So they both work for that. The existing 1920s, there are some issues with it that we have discussed with the building department, and they are willing to work with us on that. There's some head height clearances and things that might not be accepted in new construction, but they seem acceptable.
Okay, I had one more. Well, maybe I have a couple more. The building seems to lack a lot of modern communication infrastructure. There are a couple of satellite dishes on the southwest corner, which I'm assuming you'll probably take off, or I hope you would. Is there a plan for how those will be routed in so that they're kind of toward the back where that little alcove is and they won't be in the front of the building?
Yeah, not specifically for satellites, but that's a good point. I think that certainly would be taken into consideration. And we should be able to get sight lines from the rear part of the property. But interior, everything is new, of course, so there's new cabling and electrical and mechanicals, everything.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like an entire gut of the building.
It is pretty much using a lot of the existing bearing walls of the interior,
Yeah.
but the plaster will be removed and everything.
Okay, next question is about roofing and gutter repair on the west addition, so I guess we're calling that the 63, is that right? Can you do that in the current style or like the old building? I guess I have a concern about the long-term viability of the roof. I mean, and certainly maintenance issues aren't our purview necessarily, but in the context of the historical integrity and the street view, if you would, of the building, they come into play. Just a tremendous amount of roof line, tremendous amount of angles, two desperate materials already, the 63 and the old stuff. So how confident are you about your ability to keep that integrity on these roof repairs? Can you say anything about that?
Pierre has spoken with and received bids from roofing contractors for patching the roofs on an ongoing basis, and has that factored into his pro forma, where he will maintain the two distinct types of roofing, but bring them both back gradually.
Yeah, okay. And one other idea, I guess I had, I noted that you were going to stucco the kitchen within this
Yes.
concrete block now.
Yes.
And I just wondered whether any of the demolished brick from the 80 edition could be used to sort of do that, the bottom section of that before you went up with the stucco.
Yeah, possibly. And I
It-
think,
Once you remove that front addition, the kitchen is going to be even more visible from the roadbed, so that was just an idea.
yeah,
So,
I think it's not a bad idea, and I think we definitely are going to salvage that brick. There's a couple areas where we might need to patch and replace a little brick, mainly at the rear where there was an old exterior fire escape. So I think there, we would utilize that, and we'll probably have enough to use it in other ways, too.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Other questions? Do you have any questions, Jen? I have a question about this wacky window that you can see. It's on the east side of the gable, toward the front. It's like
Oh,
really low down. It's a replacement window, but it's really low at the floor level. Is that an original opening, do you think, or?
No, we think it was modified, and we're going to correct that.
Correct it? Yes, what does that mean that you're?
I think we're going to, well, is that, can I ask Kim? Or is she allowed to comment on this? Excuse me?
We have to route your question. Ask Lori first.
If you could address questions to the chair, and then, I mean, Kim cannot participate in this discussion.
Oh, I see, but you can ask. Okay. I believe the thought is now that we are going to replace that window with a more historically correct window.
But leave it at that same odd location.
No, I think we're going to
Raise it up.
raise it up to the original opening that was clearly added.
Okay. And then I also had a question about the exterior location of the air conditioning units. My understanding is that there's one that's going to be in the front. Is that avoidable at all?
We're going to try to get them around as much as possible. There are distances for the condensing units, you mean? There are limitations to how far you can run those lines. So we're going to try to cluster them mostly on the sides. There's a possibility there might need to be a couple in the front, but if so, they'll be screened.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have time for any additional information from proponents who wish to speak in favor of the project. Is there anybody who wishes to speak as a proponent for the project? It's a quiet group. Oh, okay.
Yes, I would like to say that I have no concerns about this. As the owner of a historic property, I would completely support what Professor Mullen is doing. But I would mention to the commission that, in this situation, we have a neighbor who's clearly invested in the community, and I believe said has lived here for 21 years. And this is, in my view at least, a clear case where we have pure historic-driven motives. But I'll be also speaking to the Plan Commission tonight. I'm just concerned about the next time we have a PUD that is perhaps less clear-cut, especially with a historic building and especially in the 800 block affecting the Lincoln-Busey corridor. There was obviously, another dispute about that Lincoln-Busey corridor last year, and now we have a situation where we have an opportunity to clearly improve something, and that's great, and so glad that this is hopefully happening. But kind of the same thing that I said earlier about processes with maintenance of historic properties. Do we need to examine the processes? I think I would count this as a lucky situation where this is clear, but what if it's not clear next time? Do we have processes in place as a city to make sure that we can protect areas that need to be protected when it's not so clear cut? Is there any chance that we're setting a precedent for the next time? Do we need to tighten things up? Are there any, I was speaking to Lori before the meeting, you know, I work in healthcare on a national basis, and we depend on best practices and national guidelines from a variety of different organizations. Are there best practices that perhaps need to be looked at? Are there some national guidelines that we could look at? Are we sure that this process is tight enough to withstand not this situation, which is clearly great, in my opinion, but next time when it's not quite so clear? I would encourage some discussion of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Any other speakers as proponents? If not, are there any people who wish to speak against the project? Anybody just want to talk about the project? One way or the other? Okay, sorry. These are mandated aspects of a hearing. I have to do this, sorry. Additional comments from staff or any clarifications based on the conversation thus far? No need for a rebuttal. Petitioner, is there anything else that you want to present? Okay. All right, we may now discuss the case. Comments?
Well, I'm pleased with the professionalism of the plan here and with the way it's being approached. I don't think we could ask for a better ending for this empty landmark. I don't have any problems with any of the proposals. The certificate of appropriateness, I think, should be granted with the stipulations we've talked about, and I couldn't be more pleased with the whole thing. So, thanks for bringing this to us.
Other comments? Matt?
I was going to say, earlier when you said, you made reference to the fact that you heard through the grapevine, you're like, oh, it's historic, don't even bother. Like, that made my heart hurt, because I feel like we end up objecting generally to things that are pretty wild. This seems very respectful of this structure, and this has a long, I made the argument for, back when we were looking to landmark this, that this structure was part of the social fabric of this community, because the Greek societies of the University of Illinois go back so far, and they're so strong even today. And so, even though this will no longer be one of those particular houses, it preserves the original intent of the property within the kind of historic context of where all of these places were built. And so, it preserves the social aspect to it as well as the beautiful architectural features that are there. So, to both of you, well done. It's very nice.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm from Southern Illinois, although my voice doesn't bear that much anymore. But my grandpa might have said, "Scotty, I think we died and went to heaven." Meaning that I'm completely pleased with the plan as represented. We've had hours, maybe up to 10, of debate, back and forth, submissions, alternative uses about this property. And one was a close call 2 years ago, and I think we held out, and I think that we kind of got what we deserved. I think this is a wonderful workup of the building, and I wish you much success in your project.
Okay. Can we have a motion? Anybody ready for that? Other comments? Or, yeah.
I just have one quick comment. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long battle to make sure that this house, got landmarked, and it's nice to see that someone's actually going to take good care of it going forward. So again, thanks.
Okay, so I'll string together a motion.
Okay.
I move that on HP 2017 COA 01, given its duties and responsibilities under the Urbana Code, that the Historic Preservation Commission approve the plan for the modifications to 1404 South Lincoln Avenue
As detailed to the staff report.
as stated in the staff report, period, for now.
Subject to the
Oh,
construction and general performance.
Right, yeah,
With Lori's little addition to it.
right,
yes,
sure.
did you want to word that again?
Go ahead.
Would you like to continue with your motion?
Sure, I can continue with our motion. With the understanding that the construction be in general conformance with the site plan and elevations given, and that additional certificates of appropriateness be obtained prior to undertaking any minor or major works not contained in the site plan given, or making substantial changes to minor or major works approved by the certificate of appropriateness.
And then there's the one more thing for the PUD, which is that we will allow for changes necessary to get the approval of the PUD.
Right. And Lori can probably do a better job than I can about helping me with, or can help me with words.
Site plan, but not the house.
Can we clarify that to the site plan and not to the house?
Sure, so we can put that clause on the first one and specify except those changes to the site plan that are necessary to achieve approval of the PUD. How's that?
Yep.
Sure.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Trent got it. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, should we have a roll call vote, Lori?
And I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Trent?
Thank you. I'm not as good as Terry is at this. Mr. Metcalf,
Yes.
Ms. Palioso,
Yes.
Mr. Seiler,
Yes.
Ms. Novak,
Yes.
Mr. Dossett,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd.
Yes.
Okay, the certificate of appropriateness is passed unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you, property owners and architects, for your thoughtfulness in dealing with this special property. And we wish you continued success. I hereby close HP 2017 COA 01.
Can I make a quick comment, Alice, after you close?
It's closed.
Okay.
You can make a comment, though.
Yeah. On the north border of your lot, there are some of the most mature specimens I've seen in town of one of the most highly invasive shrubs in east central Illinois, bush honeysuckle or Lonicera allure. Please clear cut them, stem poison them, and prevent their spread if you can.
Okay. Kim, do you want to come back? Next item is new business. We don't have any new business right now. Next is monitoring of historic properties. Does anybody have historic properties? Yes. Yes?
Well, Gina had her hand up.
Oh, okay, sorry. Mr.
I have a couple. I just wanted to bring up the fact that the southeast property at Buena Vista is looking really ragged. And it kind of goes to one of the comments that was brought up in how do we make sure that historic properties are maintained? What can we do to make sure they're maintained? I mean, it looks like the stucco is falling off. It's just in bad shape. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. And then I also wanted to note that I took a bike ride through campus before the students came back and ended up in front of Mumford House, which is looking really scary too. And I know that there was a letter that went out. I was not here at the last meeting, sorry. And I see that that's part of the packet. I wanted to let you guys know that I did make contact with the university about what I saw and offered to send the pictures that I took. The person that I spoke with, I think, is like a media correspondent type person who basically gave me we really don't have anything in the plan right now for any kind of maintenance on the property. So I have requested another name to speak with, letting him know that I'm not satisfied with his answer. I did not present myself as being on the HPC. I just presented myself as being a person, because that's what I was doing. I was just out on my bike and wanted to let them know that I was worried that, might not make it through the winter the way it is now. So I just wanted to make you guys aware that I did contact the university. I'm hoping to have more contact with the university.
Thanks. Thank you. Maybe, should we request for the next time we meet that our agenda include a study session maybe or something on dealing with condition of properties, maintenance issues on landmark properties? Although that might require some of us to do a bit of homework. Some of us meaning Kevin. Oops. Anything else on monitoring of historic properties?
Yeah, Alice. Well, I was just going to say, I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Louise. To the best of my knowledge, we have no formal historic monitoring process.
Yeah, you're seeing it.
And I was trying to time shift, which you really can't do, looking through the ordinance as I had a few seconds, and I couldn't find any tags. So I think that's a good challenge to us, and something maybe that we could, put on an agenda and think through. Sometimes it feels as if it's, you're kind of the cat hanging on to the window ledge or something like that. I live in East Urbana, and there's a little cottage on 107 North Weber, I believe, that is a long time landmark, and I just worry about it every time I go by. So I feel like that's a part of the process that we really don't interact with much, and probably don't have a lot of guns to bring to the battle, to put that in a sad military analogy. But I appreciate you bringing that up. So
I think one of the challenges, too, is that not every old house is a landmark, or has been landmarked, let me put it that way. I don't like the word landmark, but that's what we use, so I'm running with it. But not all of these wonderful, fantastic old houses are landmarked. And so, as a result, we only have, we can mention something, but at the end of the day, that doesn't end up falling in our jurisdiction. So I think getting better monitoring of older properties in general starts with getting more nominations into landmark properties. So I think, it's important to monitor the ones that we have on the list, but to get more and really preserve the essence of these neighborhoods, because we're looking not just at houses too, we're looking at sense of place and what it means to live in these places and how that feels because of the old houses. So to help make that a reality, we have to just get more things on the landmarks list.
I think it's probably high time that we look at additional incentives on the part of the city as well for maintenance and for projects like Pierre's project. So there's some new no tax on new construction in a certain area for how many years? If something similar to that could be on a rehabilitation project, that would help encourage quality rehabs like what Pierre is proposing. So maybe we can talk with City Council about that if we get a chance. Someone brought up the Royer House at 801 West Oregon, and there is a new owner of that property. It wasn't for sale on the market, but there is a new owner, and it's a good owner. So breathe a collective sigh of relief. Well, I think it'll still stay up, yeah. But I expect that this particular person is a preservation architect, so I think there'll be a maintenance plan and such to go along with that, like we might hope.
Can I make one other comment? I regarding the letter that we had referenced earlier and Gina's comments too, is it's having watched poor Mumford House sit there all boarded up. And the incident this spring where I was in a course on cultural heritage, and I wanted to bring people inside, and nobody knew who had the keys. Like, that's alarming. So I share the concern with you, and I think the strength of this letter is the assurance that this is not getting knocked down, or at least that it's not on some kind of list to be made go away. The downside of this, however, is there is no pledge in here to do anything about it. There's no discussion of when such a discussion would be had. So this is a very neutral letter to me. It affirms it affirms that we don't have to go get the pitchforks and torches, but at the same time, this does, and it's appreciated that getting a formal response. At the same time, it says very little about the future of the building, and I hope that we can talk more about that.
I did just pull up the email that I got back from the university regarding my concern, and the last paragraph says, presently there is no active capital or small construction improvement work initiated by a teaching or research unit associated with the building. As mentioned in our earlier conversation, the house is included as part of the 2017 Campus Master Plan update. So that was pretty much the short and sweet of it. No one's planning on spending any money, but it's on the master plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, it comes down to dollars. I had a nice email dialogue with Robert Easter when he was Dean of ACES about the round barns. $10 million is the price tag they had to do a rehab of that area. And so, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Well, and I made a couple of other comments to the gentleman that I had conversation with about the other project going on at the corner of, is it Laredo Taft and, I can never remember that cross street. Anyway, it's like an old stable that's being redone, multi-million-dollar project, yet here's the Mumford House sitting across the street from the architecture school, and we can't do anything to even fix the gutter. So
There's an irony to that, and I agree with you, Scott. I think it's the question, as always, it seems to come down to money, but I will say, as someone who is in attendance at the university, I am paying a lot of money. This is not a cheap school to go to. So when the university cries poverty, I struggle to embrace that. So in the 150, so I'll be a little firmer in my thoughts, and the fact that this is the 150th anniversary, and that's being trotted out all over town. It's everywhere. We've got the ticker tape parades, and it's awesome. But at the same time, this is the oldest extant building on campus, and it's shuttered. And it's crucial to the storytelling of what the university was founded on, which was agriculture, and part of that agricultural landscape that is still intact on campus. So my thinking, frankly, is that the university, the powers that be, whoever that is, need to get it together. This is nice. I'm glad it's not being knocked down, but it's the 150th anniversary. This is part of your history. You need to do better.
Gina, I think the building that you're referring to is called the Survey Building, or Surveying Building, and it's on Gregory,
and
near
Laredo?
6th maybe, or something. Or it's not right on a corner, but it's behind the architecture building.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, any other comments on monitoring? Staff report, do we have anything? It's October, so National Trust Preservation Conference. Kevin, you're going? Okay. Anybody else going? Past forward is? Excellent. Okay,
I'm also doing the day-long Section 106 training.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Glad there'll be people there. We have no study session. Any announcements? Nope. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.